and welcome back to Taxation is Theft, the show that talks about all the ways the government is ripping you off and what you can do to stop them. Broadcasting live on Facebook and YouTube from an underground bunker deep within the jungles of Mexico. I'm Dan Taxation is Theft Berman, former candidate for president of the United States, current governor of Texas. And today we have an awesome guest. Ashley Shade is back. She is the chair of the Outright Libertarians, and chair of the LP Massachusetts, and a candidate for City Council of North Adams. Awesome to have Ashley back. She's been on a few times before, and she's always a great guest, so you're going to like this episode. Before we get started, if you're watching the live streams, please make sure to like, share, comment, and ask your questions. But I want to emphasize this one. Make sure to share this, because on every platform that we are on, we are being shadow banned. It's absolutely ridiculous. Watching our numbers decline month to month. This show, we've had guests on who have been actively winning battles against the IRS, making sure that nobody has to pay income tax. We've been getting this information out to everybody, and this is something, imagine if we stopped paying the income tax, how much that would hurt the establishment, the tyrants in charge, and everything else. They are actively doing whatever they can to shut us down, short of deleting the account, because they want me to sound crazy for saying that, right? They want to say, oh, well, look, his account's still there. We're not doing anything. No, that's not what's going on here. So make sure you share, make sure you invite your friends. If you're on Facebook, start a watch party and invite your friends. Specifically, press the invite button, tag all your friends, bring them in. That's the only way to get this word out. Tonight's episode is brought to you by the Nugg of Knowledge, indoor grown, chemical-free, smokable hemp flower and Delta 8 vape cartridges. Lots of new products coming up soon, legal in all 50 states, and you yourself can become a Nugg dealer and sell legal weed in all 50 states. It's amazing. Go get elevated at nuggofknowledge.com. And now on to the show. Ashley, welcome back. How's it going?
Good. How are you, Dan? Thank you for having me.
I'm doing awesome. Always a pleasure to have you on. So we were just talking, what do we want to talk about? And we came up with some interesting things. And I kind of want to start with the Supreme Court, but let's save that for later. You brought up a couple interesting anniversaries that we've had in the last week. The Stonewall Riots. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so today is actually the anniversary of the Stonewall Riots. 52 years ago, the LGBTQ community in this little dive bar in New York City called the Stonewall Bar decided that enough was enough, and they started a riot against the police that were there to arrest them and oppress them and keep them from being themselves. And so every year we celebrate Pride in the month of June, and Pride is something that we all have to remember. It's not so much about being proud to be gay or proud to be queer, but it's more, we're just happy that we don't have to be arrested for existing. So always remember, Pride started off as a riot. We started off because we were being oppressed by government. We were being oppressed by the community. This is a time when they had the sodomy laws, when they had all kinds of different obscenity laws and lewd laws, and they were all focused around being gay or lesbian or having relations with other people of the same sex. So 52 years ago, we kind of kicked off the whole let's fight the government thing. And the gay community has always been one of those communities that has been against the government, against police, against brutality. And it's so important that we remember this day, because that's what it's all about. We're very proud, but Pride was a riot, and we're ready to riot again.
That's awesome. And so this is interesting, right? Because I know that there are a lot of pro-freedom people, and I mean, this is every aspect of pro-freedom, right? You're pro-freedom but there's some other group that you don't entirely agree with, and you just wish they would shut up and you would quit hearing about it. But I think this is really important, right? Because you have the "Don't Tread on Me" group, and I guess like it would be a generalization to say that they're, those are like the white nationalists, far right, but, and I know that's not all of them. That's not even near all of them, but like that's kind of like what the public identity is of that, or the public stigma, I guess. And the reality is like, and that group being like homophobic, transphobic, like, oh yeah, keep pride away from me. And then they say things like, oh yeah, I don't care. I don't care if you're gay. I don't care if you're LGBT, but you don't have to have these big pride events and rub our faces in it. But I think it's really interesting to say like, but wait a minute, like we had to do this because we were being oppressed. And like, yes, now there is more freedom, but to forget how that freedom came about and how we came to that, I mean, that's like, that would be as ignorant as saying like, well, let's not celebrate, that slavery was ended. Let's just forget about that. Let's just appreciate that we're all free now and we don't have slavery. Let's forget about all the people who were Native Americans who were murdered. Let's forget about the Holocaust. Let's forget about all this. No, we have to remember that all of this stuff happened. This is all, and like, you don't have to be a part of one of these oppressed groups to understand that, hey, there was oppression and now there is no more. And we all need to join each other in doing that, because I think that's just, if you don't stand up for somebody else, who's going to stand up for you?
Yeah, but going back to that, oppression is still happening. It's still happening very much and in very large quantities. This year alone in the United States, there have been more than 117 pieces of legislation introduced into different states targeted at the LGBTQ community. So let's not forget, Pride was a riot to fight back against oppression, but oppression is happening again in record numbers. And there are many people in many states trying to pass new laws on how to oppress us, because it riles up their base and it helps them get money from people who are fueled by hatred and who don't understand the community. And that's what it comes down to, right? Like, there's a bunch of people out there who just don't understand, and they don't even try to understand. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to educate them and help them understand, look, everybody should have the right to live their lives how they choose, as long as they're not hurting anyone else. Let people make their own decisions. Let people live. Let people be free. Because if one of us isn't free, then none of us are free. If they can take one of our rights away, they can take all of our rights away. So we have to be steadfast and principled in that everybody deserves to be free. Everybody deserves to live their lives how they choose, without fear of oppression and without government interference, as long as they're not hurting other people.
Right. Yeah, and I guess I should apologize for saying that. I mean, to any of those groups that I mentioned, there is obviously still oppression going on, but like, even like, I remember like watching a video, it might have been like a year or two ago. I want to say it was in the Philippines or somewhere in Asia, where the police basically went to somebody's house and they were trying to arrest someone. They might have killed them in the process, because they were in a gay relationship. And this was like, and like, I'm watching this video and it looks like a drug raid, right? They're kicking this guy's door in like he committed murder or something, right? So, this stuff does still happen in other parts of the world. And I think what's interesting, like you said, right? If everybody were to just like quiet down about it, and pride would go away, and we know, and like, there was no pride and nobody was saying anything about it, you still have people out there who are actively going to come in and be like, oh, well, everyone's gone. Let's start imposing some of these oppressive rules again. Let's get rid of gay marriage again. And that was another anniversary that you said was just a few days ago of what?
Yeah, so the Supreme Court ruled 5 years ago on June 26th that the states could not legally prevent gay people from getting married. It was a big ruling in the Supreme Court. And, the sad part about it is the people that say that they've always been for gay marriage or gay rights, those people who had power to make the changes to give gay people those rights never used it to do that. They always dangled it along like a carrot. Oh, we'll give you some rights, but we're not going to give you that one. We'll talk about you. We'll acknowledge that you exist, but we're not actually going to fix the problems that you're facing. The big motto of the Democratic Party is that they've always talked about being for the queer community, being for the gay community, but only when it's convenient for them and only enough to get votes that they need. They're not actually there to try to stop or prevent harm from happening to the queer community. They're not actually actively trying to stop bad legislation or overturn bad legislation. When Obama first came into office, they had the House, the Senate, and the presidency. They easily could have legalized marriage for all people through legislation. And they didn't even try. They didn't even try. So how can they sit there and say that they're the ones that are for us when they're not even trying to help our community? So it's all been a bunch of lip service for years from that party. And that's why it's so important for us to lead as we always have. In 1971, when this party was founded, we led in this issue. And we were the first party to say gay people should be able to get married. Anybody should be able to get married as long as they're consenting adults. And you should be able to get married to as many consenting adults as you want to. Consenting adults making decisions in their lives, that's up to them, right? Like, why does the government even need to be involved in that? Now, here's the problem that we do have, is we have now legislations telling us that certain people don't belong in society. Certain people shouldn't be able to use public restrooms. Certain people shouldn't be able to play sports. Certain people shouldn't be able to go to certain places and exist in society. Those are the types of laws that we fight against. Those are the types of laws that we say, no, we don't have equal rights like everybody else does. We don't have the same rights. There are actually active laws and legislation being passed that prevent us from doing anything that anybody else would do. And that's a big problem in this country. So, yeah, we've gotten some victories in the past few years. The anti-discrimination case that disallowed employers from being able to discriminate based on sexuality. And now, today, the Supreme Court ruled that they would not hear an appeal on a bathroom bill from Virginia. The bathroom bill was overturned by the lower court, saying that it was unconstitutional, and the Supreme Court refused to hear it, thus settling the debate that the bathroom bill in Virginia was unconstitutional. And it's so important to remember, like, these bills are being targeted at very specific people. When they say transgender people can't use a public bathroom, what they're saying is, we are targeting a very specific group of people and saying that they should not be able to use public restrooms. And that's blatant discrimination, right? And I mean, unfortunately...
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm just going to say, unfortunately, when you look at the aspect of that, the government steals from me too. They take my tax money too, okay? They steal from me. They steal from other transgender people. They steal from transgender people's parents. They steal from all of us, right? So they don't have a right to tell me that I can't do something when they're stealing my money to provide for it.
Right. And I mean, you know me, I'm going to say they shouldn't be stealing from anybody, but that's another story. They shouldn't be
stealing from anybody.
But yeah, I mean, these are all great points. And I wanted to, so the way you said, the way you, I guess, said what this bill was earlier before we started the show was, you said it was a transgender bathroom ban. So were they trying to ban, like, so if a school said, hey, we want to have a transgender bathroom, there was a state ban saying you're not, what was this actual law?
What this law was saying that transgender people could not use the restroom of their gender identity. So essentially, they would be asking someone like me to go use the men's restroom, which would make everybody in the men's restroom extremely uncomfortable. It would make me extremely uncomfortable, and for other people, could potentially put them in danger. When it comes to public bathrooms, everybody argues about this or that. Look, nobody wants to use a public restroom. They're disgusting. Nobody wants to be in there. You go in there because you gotta go, right? So let people use the toilet, let people do their business, and get the hell out of there. And if somebody's going to do something like illegal or to try to hurt somebody, we already have laws that cover that. So instituting a law like this is like instituting a law on guns saying, well, because somebody over here did something bad, none of you can have guns either. It's the same kind of rhetoric. It's
or because
bullshit.
Somebody was driving drunk, nobody's allowed to drive.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's just a measure to discriminate. It's a measure to say, hey, we're going to attack and oppress this group of people, because that's what government has always done. There's always been people who rile up others by saying, oh, well, these people are a danger to society and we need to oppress them so other people won't get hurt. This is something that's been going on for centuries throughout the history of the world. And it's unfortunately the playbook of politics today.
Yeah, and it's I mean, this is the way I've always viewed the situation, right? I mean, you're right. Those, public bathrooms are absolutely disgusting. But I had a layover in somewhere in Europe. I think it was in Amsterdam, and I used one of the restrooms in the shower in the airport. And what I thought was really interesting about that was, like, here we have these doors that are like this tall, and like there's a big gap under it and a big gap on top. And I mean, we even see like people doing pranks on TikTok where they're like, "Hey, can you hand me some toilet paper?" And they've got like a handful of Nutella and they wipe it on somebody the next. Like I mean, this is how the bathrooms are designed. And this airport in Amsterdam, it's like it was floor to ceiling, and it's like, oh, so it's like an actual door. You actually have some privacy. And what's interesting about that is like when you have a bathroom that is totally closed off, it's not male or female or trans or anything. Anybody can go in there. Exactly. And it's like, why isn't this this always blows my mind when I go to a restaurant and they have a men's room and a women's room, and like they're both just a single bathroom. Like it's a single toilet and a sink. And it's like, you can't have two people in there at the same time. Why not just make these for whoever wants to use them? And when you have a design like that, you don't have to discriminate. You don't have to say only this type of person can use this bathroom. But I wanted to so I just Googled this, right? Man follows child into women's restroom, because this is always the story I hear, right? Like, oh, if I see some trans person following my daughter into the women's restroom, well, okay, first of all, if the restrooms weren't divided by gender like that, you could go into a restroom. If let's say you have a young daughter, you could escort her into the restroom and be there to protect her. Because I mean, here's the reality. You let your kid walk into a restroom at McDonald's and you're not paying attention to what's going on there. There could be a woman in there who is kidnapping children and trafficking them. What about Ghislaine Maxwell and all the crap she's into? And and so I just Googled this: man follows child into women's restroom. All these articles are coming up. They're not trying to say that they're trans and they have a right to be there. These are men walking in, and there's no magic sign on the door to protect the people. These are criminals who are going in to do bad things, and that's that. And this is kind of like the mentality that we have, right? We've shifted from understanding what is a crime and making sure that criminals are caught and punished for crimes that they do, to, you're doing something that loosely, vaguely resembles what might possibly in some future reality that hasn't even happened and doesn't even exist is going to be a crime. And then therefore, we want to punish you for it. And that's absolutely antithetical to freedom and to this free country that we live in. I mean, public bathrooms are disgusting. Like, if you don't want to use them, don't use them. Like, holy shit. I went to a public restroom in China, and they literally have squatters where they have like a hole in the ground, but it's nice. It's made out of like porcelain and everything. It's not like they just dug a hole in the sand, but it's like, yeah, it's it's a public restroom. We shouldn't like be treating these things like, it's a 5-star hotel. I want to go in there and like, what are people thinking, right? Yeah, I don't know. Lots to say on that, but I think that's really interesting that we're having, arguments over these things that are pretty inconsequential. I mean, the risk of an actual crime happening for allowing somebody to use a restroom is no greater, if a trans person is using, whatever restroom they want to use. You have children being assaulted in men's restroom by men.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to stop that? Why don't you make a non-pedophile restroom? Like,
yeah, and what it comes down to is these people that think like trans people are going to go into the bathroom and attack children. What they're really saying is that, men have such a bad history of poor behavior that anyone who was born with different anatomy is probably a predator. And that speaks a lot more to the behavior and the accepted behavior in society from men than it does about any transgender person. Because you never hear problems about trans men going into the men's room. Nobody cares. Nobody blinks an eye. It's always trans women. And it's always the excuse, oh, they're gonna try to prey on somebody. And it's like, just because men have a history of preying on people and that's become, part of society, that's not true for trans people. And so that's an absurd argument. And it just makes them look bad. Right. Like, these male Christian, like super conservative legislators saying, oh, they're going to prey on children. You would know something about that, wouldn't you?
Right. Yeah. I wonder if, okay, what's your opinion on this? Do you think it has anything to do with, so I've heard this argument from women, usually more of the feminists who say things like, you tell them, yeah, carry pepper spray, carry a gun, whatever, protect yourself, defend yourself, because the world is a dangerous place. And they say things like, well, I shouldn't have to. I shouldn't have to wear pants. I should be able to wear my little mini skirt and walk around wherever I want and feel completely safe from ever being sexually assaulted. And yes, that would be great, but that's not the world that we live in. And you can't, it's already illegal to sexually assault somebody. You can't legislate away a person's bad intentions. All you can do is make them afraid to act on them, which they already should be. And if they're not, there's no laws you can create that are going to change that. So I'm wondering if that's sort of the same mentality of, I want to change things that are literally impossible to change. I want the world to be a safe place, with safe as in like there are absolutely no dangers anywhere from there's absolutely no criminals, there's no violence, there's nothing. It sounds wonderful. I'd love to live in that world too. But you can't create that world by passing new laws. Do you think that this is kind of like the same, I guess, mentality?
Well, I mean, when you talk about, yes, anybody should be able to wear whatever they want without fear of being sexually assaulted, right? we should all be able to wear whatever we want without being afraid of somebody trying to rape us or sexually assault us or anything like that. And that's not, that cannot be argued. Like, there's no argument. Like, everybody should be able to wear what they want as long as they're not hurting somebody else. Now, when you also talk about that mentality, yes, you should be able to do these things. You should be able to exist in this world without having to defend yourself from terrible people. But because there are terrible people, it is in your best interest to be able to defend yourself. It is in your best interest to learn how to defend yourself, because there are terrible people out there that are going to do terrible things. So don't just sit there and say, well, it shouldn't happen. You're right. It shouldn't happen. And we need to keep fighting. We need to keep fighting and make sure that it doesn't happen. But just in case it does, you should also be prepared for that. Don't wait and depend on somebody else to come save you. Don't do it. It's not worth it. So it's really important to remember that, these kind of behaviors and these kind of things in our society definitely need to be ridden of. And we need to teach our society how to better communicate with each other and how to learn. I think there's such a stigma around sex in general and gender that it really creates difficulties. I think it almost creates that tension in our society that feeds this type of culture, this type of, get somebody drunk and have sex with them culture. I think that's just embedded in the society, and that needs to change. That significantly needs to change. But we know that it's happening, right? Like, let's not just pretend that it doesn't happen at all. Because we know that it happens, we need to take our own actions to protect ourselves. I'm not going to count on the police coming to save me. The hell with that. They're more likely to come and shoot me. Right? So, like, I'm not going to count on somebody else protecting me. I'm going to do what I have to do to make sure I'm protected and protect the people that I love and care about that are around me. And so, yes, we need a society where these things don't happen. But in the meantime, I ain't fucking around.
Yeah, it's yeah, I mean, that's interesting because it's like it's another political lie that's been sold to us, right? Like, we're going to keep you safe, and like you were saying earlier, right? It's the carrot that they're always dangling in front of us, and they're never going to give us the carrot, right? Because then they have nothing to dangle. They're going to keep dangling the carrot.
They'll let you take a little.
They'll let you nibble.
Little nibble.
Yeah, but they gotta have something to keep stringing you along. And so that's why, you're right. Like, oh yeah, gay rights, and then it's like, the Republic helped us. No, you wanted to save that because if you got rid of that card, you can't play it again on the next round. And I mean, it absolutely sucks, but that's what they keep doing. And with safety too, right? I mean, they're always promising us, we're gonna make you safe. We're gonna make the world safer. And they come up with bullshit laws that they can pass. Oh, more police, that'll do it. We're gonna have to raise taxes for that. And then and then of course that's more money in their pocket so that they could do whatever they want. But it's like, this is the thing. They're always selling us bullshit, and they divide us, right? Like, this is how they get us to buy into it. These people are coming after you. You have to elect me or else they're going to get you, right? So now they're selling you safety again, right? I mean, imagine if the police were like knocking on your door, like, you have to give us more money so that we can continue to have police on patrol on this street because there's a burglar right there. He's right there. And if you don't give us money, we can't stop him from breaking into your house.
Sounds like extortion to me.
Yeah. How do we know this guy's not working for you? And it's like, yeah, in the real world, it's not somebody who's always working for them, but it is like they find one specific tragedy and then they just Oh, there's millions of people out there. They look at all this stuff they're doing, and they take one little example, one guy who's probably already in jail, and like, oh my God, it's going to happen again unless we do something. They do it with the guns, right? Oh, we got to take the guns away, or else everyone's there's 10,000 mass shootings every year, which is like some ridiculous statistic. That's like, if there's that many, like I think the real number they say is something like 2,000 every year. Like, doing the math. Shouldn't we see a shooter 8 times a day on CNN? Like, shouldn't we see this if that's really how many? No, they have like, I saw how they measure those statistics. It's even something like if somebody with a BB gun shoots and hits 3 people in a leg, that's considered a mass shooting. Like, it's fucking ridiculous. But it's all the lies that they sell us so that they can, like, fear and propaganda. That's how they control us. That's how they divide us. They've conveniently divided us right in half. You've got the left and the right side. Oh, well, that's convenient. They're manipulating us with all this. So, like, every time you see one of these laws and they tell you, oh my God, your children are not going to be safe in the bathrooms. No, that's fucking bullshit. That's fear propaganda that they're using. Anytime selling you fear, that should be a red flag. Whenever they're on TV telling you something that you should be afraid of, and maybe it sounds scary, that is a red flag. If you turn on your TV and you're afraid, that is a red flag.
Yeah.
Think about that, because that is always the excuse. Remember, how did Hitler start the Holocaust? Yeah, I had to go there, right? I had to go to Hitler. How did he start the Holocaust? He made people afraid of the Jews.
Yeah, he wrote a book about it.
How did we invade Afghanistan? We made people afraid of Muslims. It always starts with fear. So whenever they're telling you to be afraid of somebody, it just like yeah, no, don't be afraid. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Absolutely. And don't rely on them to protect you, because they don't give a fuck about you. They really don't. They don't give a fuck about any of you. So even if you are afraid, learn to defend yourself and defend your own family, because they are not coming to save you.
Yeah.
They're not.
It's so weird too, because like if you ask anybody in America, do you trust politicians? Like, no, right? They don't even have to think about it. No, of course, politicians they're liars, they're crooks. So when they're on TV telling you to be afraid of something, why do you believe them?
Because it fits a narrative.
Yeah. And I get it. It's difficult too, right? Like, I mean, I say this all the time. If you think you're not subject of advertising and mind control, advertising is mind control. Make you buy a certain product. I mean, look, what do I have on my desk? WD-40. It's just, but doesn't everybody know what this brand is exactly? That's weird. As soon as I held this up, it says I have connection issues. Copyright or something. I don't know. I don't even drink Coke that much, but I have one today. Like, why do we buy? Think about this, right? You walk into a store and you're like, I could have a soda right now. And you walk into the soda aisle and they've got Coke and they've got Pepsi and they've got RC Cola. Which one are you buying? You're buying one that you have been manipulated to buy. And yeah, people can say, oh, I like Coke better than Pepsi. No, that's who got to you first. You have been conditioned and addicted to that product. And the same thing is going on. And you can say like, oh yeah, I don't even see the advertising. I can walk down the street and ignore all the billboards. No, that stuff is still getting subconsciously into your brain. So just by turning on the TV and watching the news, and this is why I don't watch the news. And I mean, like, not to say I don't stay up on current events at all. But when you turn on the TV and you watch an hour of news, bombarded with programming, messages to make you think a certain way, to make you fear certain things, and control the decisions that you make when you go to vote, whether or not you want to support the government, everything else. Whenever you see something on TV that makes you afraid, that should be a big red flag. There's no escaping it. The only way to escape it is to turn off the TV.
Yeah, absolutely right. And yeah, allowing fear to be the driving factor in your decisions is not living. So go live your life and don't be afraid to make choices. And don't let anybody else take away your power to make your own choices. Be free.
Yeah. That's an interesting point. Like, a lot of people forget how to live. Right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's funny, like I see so many people experiencing life in a way that the purpose of their life is to escape the possibility of death. Like, my only purpose in life is to just not die as long as I possibly can. Right? To not feel pain for as long as I possibly can. And in doing so, you miss out on so much enjoyment. And drugs. Drugs is like such a big example, because people are like, oh, they're so dangerous and they make you do bad things, and they're bad for your liver and your kidney and everything else. And it's like, you know what? You're gonna die. At some point, you're gonna die. Like, if you do everything in fear, and I know people like this. I know a lot of people like this. You're never going to leave your city. You're never going to go on a vacation. You're never going to try anything new. You're never going to have a whole lot of fun. Like, You're going to get into your habits. You're going to have you'll have a mediocre time. And if you've never experienced real fun, you're never going to get there. Because you have to be willing to take a risk and be afraid. That's like, what do they say? Like, the purpose is not to not be afraid. It's to accept that you're afraid and to challenge your fears.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. As I believe it was Churchill who said, courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision that something is more important than fear. And whatever it is that you want to do in your life, whether that's something as simple as go on a trip, or it's fighting the government, whatever it is, you shouldn't do it. It's okay to be afraid, but don't let that fear cripple you. Don't let that fear stop you from doing things. It's okay to experience fear. We all do. But don't let it be the deciding factor in your life. Don't let it be what drives your choices. It's normal to be afraid of certain things, but it's also important that we still make the decisions that we want to make for ourselves, not for fear.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, and it's interesting because there's an entire industry built around teaching people how to enjoy their lives, because they've had it sucked out of them by the system that we live in. Yeah. I think that's fascinating. And it's because we're all stuck in that work cycle mentality. Work, pay your bills, get your health care, live as long as you possibly can. Like, that's the goal, right? The goal is to live as long as you possibly can, not to live life to the fullest.
Yeah, and right? Life, and the founders had it right. They said life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They didn't say live as long as you can. They didn't say to give in to other people's fear. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You should spend your time doing what makes you happy. We're trying to find what makes you happy. And we all have an infinite amount of time on this planet. We all have an expiration date. The one thing we all have in common is that we're all going to die one day. So let's be real about that. And the important thing is to remember, yes, we're all going to die one day. Make the most of what you have today. Do the things that make you happy. Do the things that you enjoy. Don't live life just to be alive. Live life to continue growing. Life is about struggle. It's about overcoming things. Do you know what happens to plants when they don't have to struggle? They stop growing. And people are the same. When you stop growing, you're really not living anymore. You're just there. You just exist. So struggle, overcome. Don't be afraid of struggle. Don't be afraid of pain. Don't be afraid to overcome. Keep working at it. Keep going. Because that's how we grow as people. And we should be working to grow until the day we die. We should always be looking to expand our minds, expand our ideas, expand our visions, and expand our happiness. And if you're not working for that, what the hell are you doing? Just existing. And existing and living are two totally different things. So don't just exist. Live your life and do it how you choose, as long as you're not hurting anyone else.
Right. And that's not going to come from the government.
Hell no, it's not.
They gave us 12 years of free education, and not a single word out of that was and just enjoy life.
Yeah, not a single word was hey, be happy. You know, I remember hearing this thing circulated on the internet, and this it was like a first grade class, and the teacher had an assignment. What is the meaning of life? Like, what do you want to be when you're older? Right? What do you want to do when you become older? And one child wrote, be happy. And the teacher marked it wrong and said, I don't think you understood the question. And so the child responded, I don't think you understand life.
Nice.
Right? So,
yeah, I mean,
yes.
You're supposed to say a fireman or an astronaut or something.
No, I just want to be happy. I just want to be happy. I just want to enjoy my time here. Right? So, the hell with them telling you have to do this. Yeah, Power Ranger, that would be fun. Yes. Yes, it's morphing time. Taxation is theft. Dan, if you were a Power Ranger, you'd morph into an IRS agent.
So he's one of the bad guys. Oh man. Yeah, it's man. Yeah, and so I think I failed at trying to make this point earlier about drugs, because I love drugs so much. Government has already told us that drugs aren't going to make you happy, and depending on the drugs, yeah, they're not. But some of them are, and it's not like you take the drug and then you're happy. I mean, yeah, some of them might make you laugh your ass off for a few hours, but it's all part of the journey, right? Like jumping out of a plane, skydiving. That act in itself doesn't make you happy, but the fact that you're challenging yourself, you're facing your fears and that sort of thing, that does make you happy. Experimenting with drugs and finding out what your mind is actually capable of is an amazing journey. And I want to say, definitely, I mean, don't get hooked, don't go crazy, but experiment and research what you're doing first. But there are so many things that are mind opening. Even just cannabis. One of the reasons I used to like cannabis so much was seeing the world that I live in, and then seeing it under the influence of cannabis, was seeing things in a completely different perspective, seeing things that are right in front of you, but you don't notice. And I know it affects differently, but like this is all like these are all the experiences. For a while, I was like, it was funny. I started doing this before that movie Yes Man came out, where Jim Carrey was like saying yes to everything. But like, I was like, okay, whenever an opportunity comes to me, I'm gonna say yes to it. And because of that, like I went on so many different adventures that like normally, like before that, I had like, I had opportunities come to me and they were like, I was like, yeah, that sounds like fun, but like, I can't exactly picture all the details and it sounds risky, and it's not like it was risky or dangerous or something like that. But it was just like, I didn't know like all the details and like, when's it going to start? When's it going to end? Blah, blah, blah. How's it going to work out? Am I going to run out of money? And so that prevented, so then like at one point I was just like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to say yes. Like whenever an opportunity comes along, I'm just going to say yes and jump in the deep end. And some of them turned out to be total messes, but I had absolutely fun making a mess. I don't know how we got off on this tangent, but like, this is awesome. Cause I love talking about this stuff and I don't always have an opportunity to talk about it, even though it's like, it relates so much to the government. I should be able to talk about it every day.
Well,
but
it comes back full circle to the conversation about pride, right? We are choosing to live our lives and be who we are and be as authentic as we are because we're not going to be afraid. We're fighting back against the oppression. We're fighting back against the hatred. We are not going to be afraid. I am not going to be afraid to be my authentic self, no matter what you try to do. And so it comes back to that full conversation. It's a full circle here about being yourself, living your life, making choices and decisions that make you happy.
Yeah.
Loving who you love.
It's interesting too, because like, I guess we can relate it this way. Like, you're living life in fear. I've heard stories of people who they were afraid of their parents. They didn't want to come out because they were afraid, what are my parents going to say if they find out I'm gay? And that led to, all kinds of things, depression. Sometimes it leads to suicide, like all these things. And that's not even limited to GSM issues. Like I see, the stereotypical, like, Asian son who wants to, grow up and be, whatever. And his parents want him to be a doctor. Yes, I actually knew people like that. But yes, it's also a stereotype. But it's like, it's that same thing. Yes, parents have expectations. And this is part of the programming too, right? Like, yeah, you have the government telling us how we're supposed to live our lives. But we also have our parents telling us how to live our lives. I definitely... Oh man, I pissed off my parents like so many times. They were like, why don't you go to school? Like you're so good with the computer and learn all this stuff. And I was like, no. Like when I was going to community college, and like they were like always push me, yeah, get into. And I was like, I don't know what do I want to go to college for? Like I couldn't even pick a subject. So when I was going, I took everything. I took psychology, advertising, philosophy, auto mechanics, and I got really into cars. And I started working on my car. And my parents were like, why aren't you like learning programming or and I just wasn't into it. I was like, this is what makes me happy. Like what? And they're always focused around, but you got to make money and like also, and why do I have to make so much money? Well, that comes back to the government taxing the piss out of me. You can't survive in this world without having a good job because you got to pay so many taxes. But it's so liberating to just be yourself and to when you have societal pressures, and especially like, you're somebody and society is putting so much pressure on you, pressure to say what you're doing, your existence is wrong. Even if they're not locking you up in a cage, even if they're not throwing stones at you, to just be able to walk around, go grocery shopping, to live your life, and feel a pressure like that, whether it's from your parents or your friends or strangers, that in itself is a form of oppression. And a lot of it, I think, I mean, yes, there's definitely people doing things that you cannot control, physically, a physical assault, for example. But a lot of it is in our own heads, and we have to just accept ourselves for who we are, and not be afraid to be that. And this doesn't just, I'm not just talking about GSM issues. I'm not just talking about, what your parents want your career to be. It's everything. I mean, there's pressure to there's pressure in society to oh, you have to get married, you have to have children, you have there's the whole, this is the life. This is what your life is supposed to be. And if you deviate from that, you're some sort of a loser. And it's no. Why? What if that's just not for me? What if that's just not the life I choose for myself? That's not what makes me happy. We shouldn't be forced into that. I'm ranting. I'm sorry.
No, it's true.
I've been drinking so much coffee today. So what else is going on?
Well, it's Monday, so fuck the government.
Is today fuck the government day?
Every day is fuck the government day. I wake up and I say, taxation is theft and fuck the government. But always just make sure you have spare lube ready, because the government's going to come in and they don't use it. So you got to be prepared for those situations, because they're going to happen.
Yeah, speaking of which, so for promotion for my presidential campaign, I was looking into buying condoms that were branded with my logo. And it was going to be, we were going to take these to the AVN conference in Las Vegas. And it was going to say something, for when the government fucks you, something like that. So I'm looking at, okay, how do we get this done? I need to find a condom manufacturer who can make the labels, right? So I'm looking into this, and of course, all is done in China. So I'm looking at that. And I reached out, I got some quotes. And basically, there was a few $1,000 premium on this, because they had to. I personally, I mean, the manufacturer already had to have their license, but as the person ordering the manufacture of the condoms, I had to be FDA approved, even though the manufacturer in China was already FDA approved, and I had to go through this licensing process. And it's holy shit. Even money aside, the bureaucracy of it. And I'm just ordering $500 worth of condoms, and I got to pay $1,000 on top of that for the FDA just to be able to import them, because otherwise when it gets to customs, and they told me, they were okay, if you do a small order, which was under, I think it was under 5,000, they said, we can say that it's a sample. And you don't need the FDA approval, but there's still a slight chance that customs is going to get it, and then they're going to reject it and basically set it on fire somewhere. It's going to end up in a landfill, because I didn't pay the government for it.
Okay.
Anyways, yeah, just another small example of how the government is preventing people from giving out free condoms.
Now I'm just curious.
Deadly viruses.
Yeah. I'm just curious, with these branded, would they say taxation is theft? So as you unroll it and it gets bigger, you could see the full words. So if somebody's got a full size, it would fully say taxation is theft on the side.
That's the joke, about the serial number at the bottom of the condoms, and then somebody's like, "What? No, I don't know." Oh, so you never rolled them down that far. No, I don't think they have that kind of technology. Although maybe, I mean, they can print stuff on balloons, right? Yeah. I don't know. Maybe.
It would have to be printed before it was rolled.
Yeah, and it would have to be. See, I don't know how the manufacturing process works, because it would also have to be some kind of ink that can't run under high heat and friction circumstances.
I mean, it might be part of the lube that does run off, and that's okay. Right? So.
Yeah, maybe
it could be done ribbed, right? You could rib it, so it says taxation is theft and rib. That's the ribbed part.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, but the backside of the packaging definitely was going to have the taxation is theft on it. But yeah, I don't know. That's still one of those things that like that's on my to-do list. I'm going to do that one day for something. I don't know what. For fucking freedom, right?
Yeah, for fuck the government Monday, or fuck the government Tuesday, or maybe even fuck the government Wednesday.
Yeah, there you go. Hump day.
Hump day.
All right. So, man, I'm trying to think. Like, what else was in the news? Didn't Biden do something like yesterday or Friday or something?
I tune out Biden as much as possible because it's always depressing hearing anything that he does.
It is. I just want to see. I'm just gonna Google his name and see what comes up. Nothing. Oh, I gotta check the news tab. Biden and Pelosi are on a collision course. That's okay. Can Biden get a coal state Democrat on board with his climate agenda?
I think the real question is, when is Biden's next hip replacement?
Right. This is like... okay, so I have some friends who are like... I still can't tell if they're Biden supporters or if they just support him because they're Democrats. They definitely hate Trump. They support Fauci. And it's weird because we were having this conversation, right? Because one of them was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go get the vaccine," and you know, she's a what's it called, marine biology scientist. I mean, like, she didn't just go to school for it. She was like living on boats and like, you know, studying microbacteria and like all kinds of crazy shit that would probably kill people. And so it's interesting to hear her take on this because she's very well educated, but at the same time, like, I see a lot of she's going for the bullshit government propaganda. So I brought up the point of ivermectin, right? Because there was this doctor, I don't know if you saw this, there's this doctor testifying to Congress about like, yeah, there have been experiments with ivermectin where they gave it to all these doctors in a hospital and not a single one of them caught COVID. Meanwhile, in the same hospital, there was like another few hundred doctors who did not take ivermectin, and half of them caught COVID, and they were all dealing with COVID patients. And he's like, "This is like a wonder drug. Why are we not even like? Why is the FDA not even examining this?" And so I showed this, and she's basically like, "Yeah, but ivermectin is going to give you diarrhea," and I'm like, "Okay, is that worse than COVID?" Is that worse than the side effects of the vaccine? And then I was like, okay, but look, you know, and then we started talking about Fauci and how Fauci is, I'm like, look, he has to have an answer, right? Because he works for the government. The government can't just sit there and say, well, I don't know. And they were like, Fauci says he doesn't know all the time. When he doesn't know, he says he doesn't know. And I'm like, what does he say he doesn't know about? And they were like, how long we have to wear the masks. And I'm like, that's not really like, I don't know. His assertion is we have to wear the masks. The masks work and all this other shit, when the reality is we don't know that they work. There's not any real good scientific evidence that says they work. So it's not really an I don't know. The I don't know is how long are we going to have to do it? And that basically means he's going to keep pushing the government agenda for however long he wants to. And there may never be into it. That's what that I don't know means. But when it comes to like, oh, but the vaccines aren't FDA approved, and I've seen a million people ask this question to him directly. They're not FDA approved. Yeah, but they're approved for emergency use. Yeah, but they're not FDA approved. Yeah, but they're approved for, and he just goes in this cycle, and it's like if it's safe, if it's as safe as you're telling us, why doesn't the FDA just approve it? Mm-hmm. And it's like he can't answer because we don't know. We don't know what this does. But he has to be confident in his assertions that everybody has to take it.
No, it's not that they don't know what it does. It's that they don't want to set the precedence that the FDA is useless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
That's the real thing. They don't want to set the precedence that, hey, we can actually speed this process up to 4 or 5 months, but we can't let that happen because we need the FDA to make you all feel safe. No, it's just the bureaucracy bullcrap. It is literally them just saying, well, the FDA still needs to exist and function the way they do. So we can't just say that it's FDA approved because we need the FDA to still tell you what to do.
Right.
That's the real reason. They don't want to discredit the FDA because they know that the FDA is useless and in many ways incompetent, and they can't just flat out come out and say that, so they have to give some BS excuse around it.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't want, I mean, because like imagine if they set a precedent where like, oh yeah, we can approve this drug in 6 months or 3 months or whatever it was. Then like, oh, why is this other drug taking 3 years? What's up with that? Why don't you just, I mean, and even now it's dangerous, right? Because now, well, why don't you approve for emergency use?
Uh-huh.
We know you can do that, and the reality is, well, why isn't everything approved for emergency use? And like, why don't you have right to try? That
yeah.
I mean, hey, I'm dying here.
Yeah,
I'll experiment.
Yeah, especially if you're already given a death sentence, right? The doctors say, "I'm sorry, there's nothing else we can do for you." Well, what about this goddamn experimental drug? Like, let me try something.
And somebody, who was that? Somebody was telling me about one of these things, and it was that, right? It was this experimental drug, and it had gone through the trials, and so what happened was like, okay, it's for a terminal illness. It goes through the trials, and like while it's in trials, people are allowed to experiment with it, right? Because you need to test it on human beings. And so people are like, oh, yeah, I want to try it, but it's limited to just the study. So you have to try to get into the study. But then they had all the data that they needed for the FDA. So now they're compiling the reports. So they closed the study so that they could file the stuff with the FDA and wait for the FDA to respond. And during that time, there is a window where nobody can get it, not even for experimental purposes, and they're dying. So there's this drug that appears to be working. What's the worst it's going to do? Kill you? You're already getting ready to die.
Yeah.
And but we got to wait to hear from the FDA first, whether or not it's safe and effective. That's their criteria, right? It has to be safe and effective. Let's assume it's not safe. What's it going to do? Kill you? You already have a death sentence.
Yeah.
It's not effective? Well, you're going to die anyway, and what's the problem?
Yeah, and since when has the FDA ever been effective? So why is that a requirement?
Yeah, the FDA itself is not safe and effective or effective.
Yes. So I guess it fails its own test and it needs to go.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, there you go. Every drug that has ever been recalled by the FDA was first approved by the FDA.
Yeah. So
they want to ban vitamin B and some other shit. They're always trying to.
They've clearly failed at their own objective.
Yeah. But enough about the FDA.
Enough about the FDA. Fuck the
All right,
FDA.
Ashley, it's been awesome having you on. You wanna plug your website and anything else?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we are wrapping up Pride Month here in June, but we are fighting the fight against government oppression every day. So please check out outrightusa.com. Support Outright Libertarians as we fight for the LGBTQ, the GSM community here within the party. And we do outreach to bring more GSM members here into the Libertarian Party. Yesterday, I spent my day in New York City at Pride Fest, doing some outreach with the Manhattan Libertarians. It was a beautiful event, beautiful day, hot as hell, but it was great to see millions of people out there on the streets celebrating who they are and not having to worry about being oppressed in that moment. But those moments only last for a little bit of time. So please visit outrightusa.com, come support Outright Libertarians and what we're doing. Also, as a candidate for office, if you want to support my campaign, please visit ashleyshade.com. Send a donation in, send us a message, share some of our content on social media. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to have you like, follow, and share, comment on our pages. Help us push that out. We've got a beautiful campaign going. I'm looking forward to becoming an elected official so I can roll back some government interference in your life. So that's the whole point of getting elected, is to strike down some of these laws. We've got a lot of ordinances in this city, and many of them are out of date and they need to go. So let's shrink that book and increase your choices and your ability to live your life how you choose.
Maybe that should be like that. Wouldn't that be like just the greatest like sales pitch for libertarianism? Just to say like, here's the voluminous books of laws that you have to obey, and we want to shrink it down till it's the size of Cliff Notes, so you actually can read it, what's illegal and what's not, instead of just guessing.
Yeah. The U.S. code is like 20 Bibles worth, and we want it to be like 20 pages worth. So like,
I mean, it should be pretty simple.
From 20 Bibles to 20 pages. Don't hurt people and don't take their stuff. Hey, we've got it down.
There you go. Are you going to be in Reno next year?
I absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That might be the next time I see you.
Okay.
So, and anybody listening, we're talking about the LP convention 2022. It's going to be in Reno in like what, May of
June? 2022. It's a convention year, so turn out, come out. Yeah, if that's the next time I see you, hopefully I'll see you before then. But if not, you know,
I'm enjoying Mexico too much. I'm really like, I'm just like, I'm not going back to the U.S. Screw that.
Well, maybe I need to come down to
governor.
Mexico.
I have to.
Yeah, you're running for governor, so you're gonna have to be in Texas. But maybe I need to come down to Mexico and see what the hype is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah. I mean, even like COVID wise, like it's. I mean, even pre-COVID, like so much more freedom down here. At least experience the freedom. So when you go back to the U.S., you have like a fresher mindset of like, okay, this is. Let me show you guys what freedom looks like. I've seen it. I've seen the promised land. All right, Ashley. I'll see you guys next time. Taxation is theft.
Taxation is theft.